thank you very much for this opportunity. I hope you'll find this presentation of interest to you guys. I'm really going to focus on really the nitty-gritty of how to use the geotechnical module. So it's going to be 30-35 minutes worth of quite intense training on using the geotechnical module, showing what it can do, and a little bit later some of the things it can't do. So before we start though, let's just give you a quick feedback. Why are we here? Why I'm here? Why Keynetix here doing this? Well, we actually are the developers behind the geotechnical module. So this is the technology which I'll show you how to download it and install it in a moment. But this is the technology that Autodesk have licensed from us, now available as part of the Autodesk Civil 3D subscription program. So if you've got AutoCAD Civil 3D and a subscription, you can go and grab it and install it. So as part of doing that, Autodesk really also treat us now as what they call their AEC industrial partner for Geotechnics. So Autodesk have got someone who's interested in working with Geotechnics, with any of the Autodesk products. They come and talk to us on how to go about doing it. We've been doing this now for, in fact, Steve quite nicely reminded everybody how old I am. I've been doing it now for 30-odd years, so thank you, Steve, for that. And but it's something that we have a lot of experience over in working with geotechnical data, visualizing it, managing it, and sharing it with people. And last by no means least, the reason why we're doing it with Microsol is that we have teamed up with Microsol in the USA as our representatives for our products and stuff that we do. So we do further products around the geotechnical module for sharing and managing geotechnical data. We'll come on to these products a little bit later, but we have things like HoleBase, which is our core suite of products, and we'll come on to that in a moment. What I want to really do is, first of all, talk about the geotechnical module. As I said earlier on, it's actually now available to all AutoCAD Civil 3D users, subscription holders. And there's a brand new version. I don't know if anybody's used it in the past, but there's a brand new version available for 2016. It's been a complete total rewrite. So in this training session, we're really going to concentrate on how to use that and how to work with it. Now, for those of you who haven't installed it, if you just go to your Autodesk subscription website, which I'm pretty sure this looks pretty much the same for everybody around the world, you'll see that there's this product enhancement area. If you click on that, you'll see there is the geotechnical module down there. So you can just go there, click on it, download it, and install it. So what I'm going to basically quickly cover is getting data into the geotechnical module and go through some of the interfaces, the location manager, the strata manager, creating geotechnical profiles, styles, and hatching, and perhaps we'll get through to it, looking at linking through to HoleBase and some of the other things there. So let me actually go and fire up AutoCAD. So the first thing we'll do is I'm just going to go up here. I'm just going to use AutoCAD Civil 3D. And so this, I'm working with AutoCAD 2016 now. So that when you fire up AutoCAD and AutoCAD Civil 3D, once you have the geotechnical module installed, you will see this new ribbon entry. Okay. So what we've done, if we click on Connect, it's a little bit like, for those of you who use AutoCAD Civil, it's a little bit like using AutoCAD Civil. Before you can create, when you create surfaces, before you actually start loading data into a surface, you first of all have to create a surface to load the data into. So with the actual geotechnical module, what we do is we connect to the database. In fact, I went through there quite quickly. I should have said, if you're working with some of our other software like HoleBase, you can connect to a HoleBase database and share your project data amongst your colleagues. With the geotechnical module, as you connect through to the database, it's local on your machine, so the projects are on your machine, so you can work with, only you can work with them locally. But we go into this interface, and this is our project manager, where at the moment I've only got 3 projects here, but you may have 100, 200 projects, and we can come in and filter our data. But if we want to start working on a new project, what I do is I just click on the Create button. and we go ahead and give it our project name. So let's call this one Microsol. Okay, and we give it an ID, perhaps a name. I'm not very original. The status, this is entirely up to you. We've populated it with some existing values, but you can actually go into manage if you like and create your own status values, whatever means something to you and your company. You can put in here. Likewise, the category, so how you want to categorize. All of the other data is purely optional, and it's really just their design, so when you come to open up a project, you can filter and search on this data. So with that done, I hit save, and now we have our new project ready to go. So by clicking OK, it actually links that project to my drawing. Now, I'm actually doing this from a blank new drawing. Normally, I recommend you work with a drawing with site plans, with your road design or your school design, some information in there as opposed to doing it just blank. But I'm doing it blank just to show you so we can concentrate on the geotechnical elements of it. The next thing I'm going to go is go and click on the import button because we now have to bring data into this project. We actually have a number of formats. We have ones like AGS that are used in the UK and New Zealand, but I think primarily many of you will want to use CSV data. So if I just click on CSV here and hit add, it will ask me. Now, one quick thing just before I go on, if any of you used the Geotechnical Module from 2015, we've altered the format slightly. So if you want to use the old format, you can go into pick the what we call the mapping here. I'm just going to click on default and use the new version of it. Hit add, and now it's asking me to pick the files. So these files are a particular format. The names of them, the case of them are quite important. And what we can do is give you some example files. I'm sure Stephen will be more than happy, Microsoft will be more than happy to supply you some sample files, or I can supply you sample files for you to use. We can supply you these sample files after this presentation as well. But basically, in fact, I think what we ought to do is, everybody is interested, just let us know at the end and we'll get these emailed, sent through to you. I don't want to spend too long on the format because it's actually, believe it or not, it's actually all in the help file. But if I just quickly open up one or two of them, the CSV files, oops, let me just go back and hit add again because I need to add all three, but let me just click open with Excel. And we'll just quickly show you the format of these files. So for instance, this is the location one. So each boring location has a unique ID. It has a boring type of rotary coring, CP, cable percussion. Don't get too hung up on this type. Type in whatever you want to. I quite often see it all as BH, borehole, borehole, borehole. Type in whatever you want. It's really just a way of defining. But if you do put a hole type in there, you can actually style on that hole type later on. Next are your X and Y coordinates, and ground level is your Z coordinate or your Z coordinate if I'm talking in American. So basically, one thing to bear in mind is quite often your ground level, if you're using handheld GPS, can be not quite so good. So quite often it's worth just double checking your ground level. Perhaps if you've got a survey, topological survey, take the ground level from the DTM and feed it back into your CSV file. So that just gives you an example. But what I will say is we will get these sample files out to you because the names of the headers of the files are all important. They need to be in the right format. So I won't go into all of these, but I'll just quickly open this one here as well. So this is the one that has all of the strata information on. And again, I think you'll see it's not particularly complex. But for each boring, we have depth data, so depth top and depth base. So from 0 to 1.5 feet. We have legend code, which is just a way of categorizing your geology. Again, don't get too hung up on these numbers. You can put in there anything you want. So use that for your unified soils classification if you want, or you could use geology code for that. So these are basically, use them any way you want as a way of classifying. And you can put two different values in there. In fact, you can also go geology code 2 if you like as well. if you have got, you want to visualize it differently because you're not too sure how to classify the geology, just put your geology codes in there, however what feels best for you. The important thing is for each boring location, we have this nice consecutive row of numbers going down on it all, and they don't overlap or anything like that because it won't look right when you bring it in. The final one, which I won't open up, is just optional, but it's in case you've got what's called inclined boreholes, i.e. boreholes that go off at an angle, don't go directly vertically down, they're sort of going off at 3 o'clock at perhaps 45 degrees angle going down, and we can define that in there as well. So just coming out here, I'm going to pick these 3 files and hit open. So we actually have them. Oops, let's just clear that and do it again. So we had one there, 1, 2, 3, hit open. And now we go through a mini little wizard to pull this data in. So it's validating, checking what we've got. The next page is saying, these are all the borings. If I don't want to bring them all in, I could actually turn 1 or 2 off so I don't see all the borings, but in this case, I want to bring them all in. It's now telling me precisely what I'm going to get. I'm going to get 26 boring locations. One of them is inclined, and we have in total 88 separate geology strata descriptions coming through. You notice we also have updated and unaffected. It means I may already have imported data, and I'm importing phase 2 or phase 3 of the data on here. So you may well already have 40 boreholes in here, and you're importing another 40 on or another 20 on top of that. So you can work with 2 lots of data in the same project. So let's hit finished on that, and now we have our geotechnical data come through, ready for us to work at. A couple of little things as we go through here. Let me just put on a shaded view so you can see, and it's color-coded based on different geology types. But if I nip through now to my layer manager, you'll see that we actually have a new grouping in there called Keynetix. And what I quite often do is just, as soon as I bring data in, I go in and turn it all off. Come down here and just turn on where my borehole locations are. Then down here, because we've got it classified, I can quickly see where different data is across my site. So the blue indicates clay I've got around my site. I notice it's not in all of my holes. I can bring in GV, which in this case for me indicates gravel. So that's just about over my whole site, as is ST, which is sandstone. I was lazy typing here, and instead of putting in the full name, I just typed in ST for sandstone as opposed to typing in the full word. And finally, made ground or fill. But you can use this layer. Now, imagine we were doing that with your site plan. Literally in seconds, we can see what geology we're finding underneath your site. Have we found some peat that sits below where you're expecting your bridge supports to be, or where the core of your building's going to be with all the elevators in, etc.? Have we got what? Are we going to have problems? It's a much quicker way of visualizing and understanding what's going on with your data. So anyway, let's move back now. So we pulled this data in. Let's go back to top view, take it into 2D wireframe. And we go to the Geotechnical Module. We can now come across here and we can go to our Locations tab. Okay. So this lists all of the borings that we have in our project. And quickly going across here, in fact, what I'm going to do is just flip it back into 3D again. Let's just go down to isometric. The first thing to notice is that we have this one here called 3D stick vertical exaggeration. At the moment, I've got it set to 5. If we set it to 1, can you see? So that's how deep the boreholes really are. But by applying this, I'm scaling up my points at the top. I'm scaling up my boreholes, and later on, when we start generating civil 3D surfaces, I'm also changing the vertical exaggeration of those as well by just clicking in this one location. The other things we can do here is decide what data we want to show. So it may be I don't want to show all of my 3D boreholes. I can turn them off, turn them all off, turn them all on. Likewise with the actual plan symbols. on top as well. And by the way, these plan symbols that you see, they're just normal AutoCAD points. So if you go to the location group manager, and you see all these location points, and if I right click on there and go to edit, and where did that come up on my screen? Let's try it again. Edit. Nope. The case of the disappearing dialog boxes, unless that's it down there. That's it here, isn't it? Right. Can I put it out? Well, there we go. There we go. Sorry. I was on single screen usage the other day, and when you change from single screens to dual screens back to single screens, your AutoCAD layout sometimes get lost. So these is, you can see, we just created normal points, and over here we have different point styles representing our different styles that we're using inside AutoCAD. So if you don't like the style we're using, you can just go into your normal point settings and design your own style for the borehole boring. So if you want a trial pit to look one way, rotary core in another way, you can actually go and override what we're doing by just defining your own and put them in there. So it's pretty straightforward to do. So moving on with this though, what we've got here is that we can display certain borings. We can also use this include one over here. I mentioned you can decide whether you want to include a boring or not as you import. Perhaps you didn't notice that one of them has got some very odd results going on with it and you prefer not to use it. What you can actually do is just click on this include button, and you notice the boring in the middle here is just disappearing. By clicking on that, we're saying to it, ignore this boring for all of the rest of the work I'm doing. So when we create profiles, when we create surfaces, pretend this boring doesn't exist. If we click it back, it will then add that boring into your data. So it's just really a way of telling it to ignore what you're seeing. The final one here is actually banned by. You remember when we imported the data, we had legend code and geology code, and I said actually you can use them for whatever you want to as a way of banning your geology. Well, if I want to ban the geology by my legend codes, just click here, and you notice it's all changed color, the banding's all altered, because we now, instead of using the geology, we're using the legend code. So legend codes are referring to your soil classifications, will be now based on your soil classifications, that values coming through. We're just about done in here. The last thing I want to show you is if I flick back to my top view, let's just go back to geology codes again. We also have the ability to display our boring strips on plan. These things are really useful. Let me just increase the vertical exaggeration a little bit to threefold for trying to quickly understand also when you're working in plan what geology is around your site. So for instance here we can see the blue, we zoom in, we can see CL for clay, but we have clay at the top end of our site. We also actually have a clay lens a little bit further down in the site and some clay at the bottom. So these strips are really useful at showing what geology you have. The next section we're going to look at is the generation of the actual 3D surfaces. So if I just flip this back into 3D again, zoom in a little bit, you notice that I've got no surfaces created. But if I go into the strata manager, this will list me all the different geology. I'm working on geology codes now. So this lists me all the different geology codes that we actually have in our project. And for each one, it will tells us how many borings it's found in. Now, all we have to do now is click. So for Mayground top, if I click, it's created me the Civil 3D surface, and it's pulled in all the data for me. So by just clicking, for each one of these, it's actually going in, creating the surface, and pulling the information in for me. So in a matter of a few seconds, we now have, let me take this back into shaded view again, we have our geology being pulled in and being displayed. And all of the Civil 3D surfaces are created for us. Now I tend to just use the geotechnical interface to turn layers off and on. So for instance, you can see where we got something strange going on with our clay. where it's coming in across the site. If we get the time a little bit later, I won't have too much time, but I'll show you some of the basic commands to actually model the geology, to show how to get it fitted into the areas you want it to be. May not have time because that's what my AU class was all about, and it took an hour to do that bit. But there's some recordings of it up on the web as well, which you can look at and work with. But the beauty here is how quickly you can come in and tell it to use some of this geology. Now, it may be that you don't want it to use all of it. But, you know, we've got this borehole in the middle, borehole 4. Just look at this. In fact, what we'll do is I'm going to go to my strata manager, go to my clay, and you see we have this button called View. If I click on that, this is now telling me all of the borings where clay occurs in. Now, if I want to, I can say go to number 4 boring and don't use that data, and it will tell it to ignore clay in boring 4. Okay, so I think I probably need to flip back to 2D. This does not always update, but if I flip it back to shaded view, just hide that there. Can you see now it doesn't actually cross over to that borehole anymore because we told it to ignore that data in that borehole? So you've got these controls and ways of quickly showing where it is. Now, in reality, what you need to do is, this is just really your starting point of getting the data in. You need to refer to geology maps, you need to look at WMS mapping services, photographs, a whole host of different data sets. And actually, AutoCAD Civil is a great place to do it. One thing that people quite often forget is that AutoCAD Civil, if you go down to your Planning and Analysis section, has in it all of the AutoCAD map functionality. So look at all these GIS formats we can load in. So if you're working in an organization that uses ARC server and you've got ARC SGE, you can pull in all of the mapping, all the GIS data into your AutoCAD session with your geotechnical information. So perhaps you've got maps of utility cables where they're running, or geology maps, a whole host of different data you can use here, pull in and see it all in context. So when you come to do your modeling, you've got building a much better picture of where and what's going on with your data. Let's go back to Civil 3D. So we've pulled the data in. It's not perfect, but it's a starting point. What I want to do now is quickly change into top view. Let's just change my layout and just show you sort of the next type of work that we can do on here. So I'm just going to put this into 3 viewports, okay? Let's make this one at the bottom into my, this is the way I normally work. I work with one in 3D. So let's make that shaded so I can see what's going on down here. I've got my main plan one here. I'm going to go over now to my Geotechnical Module. And we're going to now use this create command, so create profile. You come in here. These are just your standard profile view. I'm using the UK configuration, so you probably don't recognize these styles. But if I was working with the Imperial, or if you're working with your own customized drawing template in AutoCAD Civil, this would just list your standard profile views that you're familiar with. So I'm just going to pick one of those ones, doesn't matter which one really. Hit create alignment and specify where I want to put my alignment through. So I'm just going to come through here, just do one through my site. Okay. Before I go on, I can choose whether I want to hatch my strata or not. So I think what I'll do for now is I'll just pick one of those just to give you a flavor of what's going on. We'll now hit next. The next thing I want to do is, how do I want to show my boring data in my profile? Do I want to actually show the boring strips as geology codes or as legend codes? I'll just leave it on geology code for now. And then we have this interesting one here, which is buffer by. So basically, this is the distance either side of my alignment it's going to be looking for borings. So make the number bigger, more it will find. Make the number smaller, less it will find. We're also telling it to be dynamic. I can actually just go and tell it I want to pick the borings directly off the drawing. But if I leave it this way, it allows me to really use AutoCAD features, civil features, as a thinking tool, and you'll see what I mean in a moment. So let's hit finish on that. Come over here, and I'll just put my profile up here. So in a matter of a few seconds, hopefully you can see that we have generated geotechnical cross-section across our site of the geology we got with our borings on there. But this is why I love Civil 3D so much. Let's just move my alignment line over here. Let's see what we get. Hit escape, and now we've got a new section profile being updated for us. So this suddenly becomes a thinking tool, because I can look around my site and quickly understand what's going on with my geology. Because what I'm really looking for is anomalies, things that are a bit different, a bit strange, because they're the things that are going to cause problems when you come to construct. So if you can pull and look at this data and have a better idea of it at this early design stage, then you're going to hopefully save a lot of headaches and problems when you come to construct later on. So again, let me just do another very quick one of that using the same technique again. So we'll go create again. This time I'll let it hatch it all in. Perhaps tell it to do it on my legend codes information as well, and put that up here. So now you notice it's all hatched in. Some problems in there, I knew there would be. This is where we've got clay over certain parts of the site, but not on others, so you can see what's happening there. Again, this is the point of doing this. It's highlighting where the problems are, so you can go in and correct them and work that. We haven't really got time in this webinar to show you the techniques to model the data. Perhaps that's if enough people want it, that's something we can do in a future webinar, showing you how to use feature lines and break lines and boundaries in AutoCAD Civil, so you can actually model this data. And it's actually, once you learn the concept of using those three, it's a relatively easy process to go through and change. We're nearly there, I think, with the geotechnical module now. I think the last little bit I just want to mention is we said before that everything we do here is using standard AutoCAD features, styles and methods. So for instance, if I go into the style command, you'll see that I'm using a style called geology codes, and depending on the type of geology it is, or the type of boring it is, it's using a different default. In some respects, perhaps we've done this wrong way around. We should have just created a new one, and let's call this new geology style simple. And it doesn't matter really what type of boring it is. I just want to use all my standard settings, and perhaps I want to create a very simple, small 3D stick. So let's just call this one 3 units across. Hit save. But other than that, everything else we're going to do is just going to be our default values. So we've saved, let's just save that. If I come back in here again, I can pick on simple now and go set current. And I don't know if you notice that now, but all of our borings have now altered size, and we're using the same block for the point for everything. So I can just come in here now, go back to my strata manager, oops, wrong one, back to my style manager, go to simple, and perhaps I can say here, actually, if you find, let's say, let's add a new entry here. Let's say we find a cable percussion hole. I want you to use, and I can just pick a standard AutoCAD point style. We've created some for you to use here. So coming down here, I've got one called cable percussion already on here. So I'm telling it to use cable percussion, and it may be for cable percussion holes. I want to not show them 3 meters wide. I want to show them 5 meters wide, or 6 units wide, I should say. Hit save on that. In fact, what we'll do on there is just hit save on that one now. I don't know if you notice now, we now have some borings that are 3 meters wide and 6 meters wide. I have no idea why you'd want to do it quite that way, but what I'm showing you is really just how you can style your data, change the point styles. It's completely configurable how you want it and how it looks. Likewise with the colors that you're seeing over here in the model. If I go to my hatch manager, we call in our yellow over here is our gravel. So let's just come down here and tell it to find our gravel. And we see that we told it to use a 3D color of yellow. So if I want to change the color to a different color, I can just pick whichever color I want to, hit OK on there, and it will be used that color. And when we show it in our geotechnical profiles, again, we may want to use that same orange there as well, but perhaps this time we don't want it as a solid, we just want to use a angled hatch for it instead. In fact, what we may want to do is use an angled hatch for that one, but we also want to show it as, let's go another angled hatch, but at 45 degrees to the first one, and we want to show that one in red. So we actually can overlay hatch patterns. So for instance, though it's a crude way of doing it, you could show rough percentages of gravel, sand, silt actually within your hatch pattern. So if we were to save that now, what I'm going to have to do is just it doesn't actually update the profiles automatically. So what I'll do is I'll just delete that one, go to create profile again, leave it with all the standard settings as before, hit finish and put over here, and now can you see there's our new hatched area, and there's the problem with our clay going between boreholes that we need to tidy up later on. Can you see the new hatch style we've told it to use? So it's a really flexible tool. It has got some limitations, but it's a really rapid way of getting your geotechnical data into AutoCAD Civil, so you can start visualizing, working with it, and sharing it with other people. The other nice thing to know about this, and I've got to notice I'm dragging on a little bit. One final thing: if you guys are working with Revit, InfoWorks, or Navisworks, which don't always take AutoCAD Civil 3D surfaces particularly well, what you can do is use the tools here. So if I just go, say, to my strata manager again, I'll just tell it to bring in my Mayground. Let's just do Mayground on its own. The last thing we'll do here is if I click on that Mayground, I can go extract from surface my solid. So I'm just going to go from Mayground base, use my Mayground top. Let's color code it red and hit OK and create solid. Just so you can see what I've just done there, I'm just going to quickly go back to the Geotechnical Module again and just turn off my existing layers. So what we have now in here, let's put solid shaded view on, is an AutoCAD solid object that is of my strata. So when we were talking, and Steve mentioned beforehand, perhaps you could plot this out in Civil using 3D printing. It's just an idea we're playing around with, but if you are modeling this, we can take this data out into Revit, we can take it out into Navisworks, or we may want to actually build a 3D model that we can print off, so when you're talking to your clients and you're trying to share ideas with other colleagues that perhaps can't quite look at geotechnics the same way as you can actually use this as a physical thing to show people and try to get ideas and thoughts over to them. So I think that's enough for now. What I'm going to do now is just move on and just talk a little bit more around the idea of geotechnical data management. So basically, as I've said, Keynetix do a range of geotechnical data. So our flagship product is really our HoleBase SI suite of software. It's designed really for you to put a whole lot of geotechnical data in one location, which you can keep going back to and referring to. So it may be old projects, current projects, even projects you're only going out to tender, can all be in this one location. And basically you can refer to that data, look at that data, and use it as your pool of knowledge. From that, you can generate boring logs, quick sections, you can work out where you want to position your borings for new jobs coming through, even use it for tenders to look at what do we know about the geology around this area. So HoleBase is, I'll show you some of the stuff coming through there. But our way we work with HoleBase is we want to make that data available in other software. So for instance, we want to bring it through into AutoCAD Civil. So very similar to how Geotechnical Module works, in fact, you can use the Geotechnical Module with HoleBase, have HoleBase on your server, And that way, different people using Geotechnical Module around the organization can go in and pull the same project data into drawings, share those drawings around different people and actually access that common data. We can even do the same thing inside Excel. So we go into HoleBase, pull the data through, and this is all done with a click of a button, and the results are shown in Excel. And we also do integrate that with what we call our geotechnical lab management software. So if you're doing lab tests on geology, looking at the plastic limit states, the liquid limit states, and you're recording all that information, we do software that manages your labs, but we use data import and export, so we can get all this data back into HoleBase again. And actually, because we can get the data back into HoleBase, that means we can then put it through into AutoCAD, and we can visualize this information. So, for instance, the CBR, California bearing ratios, so when you're doing highways, so you're looking at sort of the strength of the ground, etc., we can pull that data through and generate a hotspot map inside HoleBase, showing you, inside AutoCAD Civil, showing you where you've got hard and soft ground, where you intend to run the road through. So, I'm not going to spend very long on this. I'll just go through this very quickly just to give you, here are all different types of usage within HoleBase. So within HoleBase, it has its own GIS system in there. So perhaps you're using it at the very early feasibility, and you're using it with aerial photography. You can load in DXF files, web mapping services, all different types of data, and you're planning where you want to put your borings. You can generate a quick plot from this, generate a GPS file, give it to your drilling team to go out, so they actually drill the holes where you want them to be in the right location. So you could use the software for that. When you've got the data coming back in, you can design your own look and feel of your boring logs, and then at a click of a button, generate boring logs from it all. So the data that you see here are digitally being created by a click of a button once you've entered the data, got the data onto the system, and put it in that way. So we've got quick sections. You don't need to be a CAD expert, by the way, in doing this. This is all done really quickly, really easy coming through. The next two slides are actually generated from inside Excel. So inside Excel, we actually log into HoleBase. There's a little button. You tell it which project you want to work on and what data you want to see. You click a button and up pops these. So here we got A-line tests, we got grading envelopes for particle sizes. In fact, these are just standard Excel sheets, so you can design them. There's charts the way you want to look completely yourself, but they get populated almost instantly with the data coming in from HoleBase. It's all about managing this data. The final thing is either the Geotechnical Module, which we've already seen, or its big brother. Now, the Geotechnical Module, and if I go into HoleBase, only has certain limitations. It will only work on your whole location and your strata. But if you're working with geology data, there's an enormous amount of additional information you may be interested in. So, for instance, here, I'm showing here, this is using the Civil 3D, HoleBase SI extension for Civil 3D. But here, we're linking into, in this case, it's contaminant data. So we're showing where we got different levels of contaminants across our site, and we're pulling that data through into AutoCAD Civil 3D. I could be using that same method on almost any data. So let's generate me a surface representing the water table. Let's do it representing levels of, where does all the rock heads start, and only rock and nothing else. So hundreds of different usages you can use to pull in that data, either to generate surfaces or I haven't shown it here, but you could do another one that shows you all the locations of all your samples that you've taken across the site. Again, making it really easy to visualize the data. On the right-hand side, we have some of the more sophisticated log strips that HoleBase SI gives you and the Civil extension. So you can't do this with a Geotechnical Module, but here, when we were talking about hole types, this one here is a rotary coring hole. So this is my coring recovery ratios. In fact, this wasn't a particularly great hole by the looks of it, looking at the ratios coming out of it, at the bottom down here. But the look at this data and how it looks and what you retrieve back can all be designed inside HoleBase add it into Civil, and then every time you use it, it pops up this information. So there we got the recovery data. On this boring over here, we've got all of our sample IDs going down our boring, or our sample locations, our water strike information, and also piezometer locations. So our installations, our other information. So again, we're just showing if the geotechnical module doesn't go quite far enough for you, by moving over to the HoleBase SI, there's extra stuff we do. So hopefully we'll have one tool. If the geotechnical module doesn't do what it is, another tool will do what you want it to do. I think we're just about up with time now, so I won't spend any longer, but if there's any questions, I can go in and give you a live demo, and if anybody wants to see a live demo of HoleBase and the HoleBase SI extension for Civil 3D, please let us know. We can show you that in the future. But just to sum up, you've seen the geotechnical module. When you move over to HoleBase, what it allows you to do is really share projects and drawings across your network. So the geotechnical module is designed to work on a single machine at a time. So if there's multiple people working on a drawing and you want to get to the same data, then going down the HoleBase route will help you out enormously. Then there's all this additional downhole data. I've put 5, 6 values here. In our database, there's probably about 2,000 extra categories of information that you can actually access and show if you want to. So all your lab test results, all that in situ test results, all that information you can pull and show and access either as 3D surfaces, or you can generate log strips with all that information on. So I hope you found it useful, and if there's any questions or any other information you need, please don't hesitate to contact us.